For today's midweek podcast, we're going to be looking at the book of Ecclesiastes, which is thought to have been written also by King Solomon. Probably, if you're following along with these midweek podcasts, you'll see that we've had a lot of things pertaining to King Solomon or things attributed to King Solomon as we move along. I actually included uh, um, several of my thoughts about the book of Ecclesiastes during my um, um, chronological study of the Bible that I began in 1994 and finished in 2019, 2020. And um, I don't think that I have to reinvent the wheel here when I talk about Ecclesiastes. I was looking back at some of the essays that I wrote coming from Ecclesiastes, and um, the thoughts that I had at whatever year that was that I wrote those, I still kind of hold to. Actually, from the time I wrote those till now, this passage of additional life that I've lived, I hold to them even more than I did before. And it just turns out I am wearing my deep and wide t-shirt today. I was looking back at some of my podcasts and I see that I wear this shirt a lot. I wear this shirt a lot because it is very soft and it's extremely comfortable. When I made a bunch of these shirts with the covers of some of my books, the one that came in for Deep and Wide had a flaw in it, so they sent me another one at no additional charge. So I've already wore one out and it's gone in the trash. And then this is the one that actually had the flaw in it, but it's doing just fine. So today, as we look at Ecclesiastes, I'm going to do something that I don't often do on here, and that's just read with you. But some of the things that I want to say about Ecclesiastes, I literally have already said because I've written about them. If you're following along, I have Ecclesiastes as the study from April 16th through April 21st. If you're familiar with this book at all, it has 366 daily passages. So even if it's um, um, the day where you have the year where you have a February 29th, you are covered in this. There are some additional passages besides the 366. For instance, I do have a section, some sections at the beginning with some important information about the Bible. What is the Bible, what it is, and what it is not. And I also have some conversation in between the testaments for the intertestament period of 400 years. So anyway, when we're looking at Ecclesiastes, in this book, I titled it Ecclesiastes, What is the Purpose? I haven't titled this podcast yet, but when I'm in editing, something will come to me. I'm not thinking it's going to be Ecclesiastes, What is the Purpose? I have a couple of other ideas, and we'll see how those flesh out from this. So Ecclesiastes is thought to have been written by King Solomon around 935 BCE. We think that Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes near the end part of his life. And so I'm going to share with you from several of the passages here in my devotional book. This comes from April 16th, where I'm looking at Ecclesiastes 3:12. I know that there is nothing better for men than to be happy and do good while they live. Now, it's not like that's not an instruction telling you whatever you do, just make sure you're keeping yourself happy and that's all, because that's not all. But what it's saying is we have to learn to be content. And I think the Apostle Paul gives us that information in that teaching later. But we do have to be content, and we have to be doing good while we live. So what does it mean to be good? If you're good, you're concerned about others and you're helpful to others. If you're doing good, you're not hurting people. You're not taking a bunch of people with brown skin, putting them on an airplane, calling them terrorists and gangsters, and sending them to certain death in a prison in another country without even evaluating if your statements are true, because in that case they knew those statements weren't true. They gathered up some brown men and they got rid of them. So obviously that's not doing good. So not only do we have the lessons of Jesus instructing us what it is we're supposed to be about in our life on earth, and how we are truly supposed to love God and love all people. That's not optional. And if you are doing the opposite of loving other people, you are far, far, far away from what God asks of us and what Jesus modeled for us. And you cannot profess to be a lover of God, a follower of Jesus, and do these things to other people, or be supportive of these things that are done to other people that are clearly unjust. You can't fool yourself into saying these are okay. It just absolutely is not. Open your eyes, wake up, stop being asleep, stand up against these atrocities. I remember as a kid, we would study about World War II and say, well, how in the world did these people living in Nazi Germany acquiesce to these things? How did they just let this happen? Well, we're seeing it happen again right now. And people are saying, "Oh, you're over exaggerating. This isn't anything like that." This is exactly like the beginnings of that. And if we don't put a stop to it, it will be that. Everyone with brown skin will be just like the Jews in the internment camps, the transgender people, the gay people. Nazi Germany also had a concentration camp where they killed a lot of people suspected of being homosexual. So if you are gay, or we think you might be gay, guess what? I've got news for you here in America right now. They would do that right now in a heartbeat if they thought they could get away with it. So when Solomon is telling us that there's nothing better for men than to be happy, meaning being content. That doesn't mean put your happiness above everyone else, but being happy and do good while living. And I'm going to read a little bit of my commentary on these because when I reread them a few days ago, it's like, yeah, there are times when I reread things I've written and says, man, I would say that a different way. In fact, this is actually a second edition, because some of the things that I was writing before 2016, um, I was pointing out some fallacies of the way people were thinking, or their rationale they had for supporting Donald Trump. And I said, that's ridiculous. That will never happen. Well, then he became president, and some of those things actually did happen. So their rationale turned out to, well, if that's what you wanted, then you did get that. And so I had to rewrite some things, because some of my things, that's ridiculous. That could never happen. Guess what? It happened. I had to change this. So when we're talking about having concentrations in the United States for anyone with brown skin who speaks Spanish specifically, we don't seem to have trouble with immigrants that are coming from European nations where their skin is very, very pale and they have blonde hair and blue or green eyes. We don't have a problem with that. So our problem is not with immigration. Our problem with people with brown skin who speak Spanish, that is a problem. And our problem is people we don't understand, the transgender community, which is less than 1% of everybody. And if we really want to be concerned about the 1%, let's talk about the 1% as the very, 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 very top, the ones that are buying power, that aren't paying their fair share of taxes. That's the 1% we need to be concerned about. So sometimes when I reread my stuff, I have to read it, and I had to create a second edition after Donald Trump became president and then lost in his reelection campaign. And some of the things I had criticized people for saying, no, that can never happen. Well, it did happen. And we're in a place now again where people say, no, another Holocaust could not happen. Yes, it could. And I tell you what, if you were a Hispanic, Spanish speaking, brown skinned man who happened to have some tattoos and got on that plane, are now living a pure hell in a jail in um, Central America, Wait, you get these people from Venezuela, so we deported them to a country that was not their country? Think about that. So we said, oh, this couldn't happen. Well, I tell you what, if you were one of those people, you couldn't convince them that the Holocaust couldn't happen again because they're living it. They're living it. So I will calm down. So I don't know that I will calm down. I don't know that I will be calm for the rest of my life if this doesn't get rectified. But okay. So anyway, um, I did reread what I wrote here on Ecclesiastes, and I didn't need to change anything. And actually, in the second edition, my work on Ecclesiastes did not change. The formatting changed, um, the way it looks on the page, but the actual content did. Okay, enough of that mess. Let's move forward. Ecclesiastes. Solomon is likely the king who wrote the essay we know as the book of Ecclesiastes. It seems as if he wrote this near the end of his life and shared his regrets that he spent too much of his time focused on work and projects. He spends 12 chapters summarizing how all of the work and success he achieved is worthless in the span of eternity. And well, isn't that the truth? You know, if we're looking at what we do and where we spend our time and where we value our time and what we value in the work that we do trying to help others, if you're looking at the whole span of eternity, it doesn't matter. Even that 1% of people that are squashing all of us so they can get richer and have more power, sometime they're going to die, and that will not carry forward to their eternity, and they will be known for the evil they did, not the money they had, because the money won't matter to anything in death. He will die just like the poor man, and none of the belongings and achievements will matter nor differentiate them beyond death. He writes this as a warning or advice to young men in the beginnings of their lives. Perhaps he was writing this for his grandchildren. Solomon leaves a two-part advice for living life. He recommends that they find happiness in daily life and that they improve the lives of others by caring about them. Now, at the time of these writings, they separated males and females much more differently than I started to say than we do today, than we should do today, because there's a movement to try and separate and lessen female. You don't believe that? What happened to all the female leaders in our military organizations since 2025 has begun? They're gone. On April 17th, I looked in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, and I quote the first part of verse 8 and the first part of verse 9. And then I apply it in uh, life today. Specifically, I'm applying it to my life today, people like me. There was a man all alone, blah, 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 blah. Two are better than one, blah, 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 blah. Solomon warns the young man to not spend all of his time alone with no friends or partners. It makes no sense to spend all of your time working if there is no one to share it with. You know, it's kind of interesting because Solomon had over 900 wives and mistresses. So it's not like there weren't people around, but maybe Solomon never got past the physical. Uh, he maybe he was a sex addict. Maybe that's all, because he's talking about being alone. You had all these people. How is it you had 900 wives and mistresses and you weren't close to any of them? Lots of questions to ask there. He builds an argument for being paired. Two can help each other through difficulty. If you fall, someone is there to help you back up. If you are cold, you can huddle together to keep warm. He does not include love in his argument, but with the reputation of Solomon with more than 1,000 women, we can infer that he was not able to really comprehend true love. Our lesson to learn from this is that we cannot spend too much time waking up, going to work, working late, coming home, going to sleep, and waking up to do it all over again. Focusing too much time on work will not leave any time to maintain friendships of value. Your connections with family will grow cold and distant if you have no time to cultivate these relationships. If you find love and a partner for your life, you will not be able to sustain it if you have no time to spend with them. At the time I wrote this, it was before I retired. I retired 9 years ago. So whenever I was writing my reflections here from my studies of Ecclesiastes, I was not retired. I kind of have some little different perspectives now. He talks about living your whole life running and doing, wake, work, go home, eat, sleep, wake, and just this endless cycle. I kind of have a different cycle now that I've been retired for almost a decade. Um, I kind of like my solitude, and I know it's still not good for me to be alone. Of course, it's better to be alone than be with the wrong person. And I've had to learn that several times in the last 20 years. But um, being with the wrong person doesn't help either. But you can't withdraw and be totally to yourself, totally relying upon yourself to the point that you really get grouchy if your alone time gets messed with. I've had a very difficult time the last week because I have needed to help some other people do something. And I don't have any hard feelings to those people that needed help. It has nothing to do with them. It has to do with I've got my routine. I know what I like to do and I don't like it messed with. And I think I'm very dangerous to the place now. A little different thinking than Solomon, but getting to the end of my life where it's not where I'm getting up and rushing to work, coming home, sleeping, so I can go to work the next day again. It's about getting up, going through what it is that I do every Monday, what it is that I do every Tuesday, and these things that I do on a daily routine basis, and how I get so focused on that when my routine gets messed with, Larry's a grouchy bear. And also, that's not good because that's not the purpose. So, what is the purpose? Although we get to something in another day's reflection here, where hmm, who's to say maybe that is the purpose, that your routines, if that's how you enjoy life. I don't want to steal my thunder there. Okay. Uh, on April 18th, I get into the daydreaming and the meaningless of that, the fantasy, wishing and thinking. It's not just the wealthy that spend time wishing and thinking about good things. Uh, um, in a way, that's kind of goes back to the very first passage that we looked at here in Ecclesiastes about being content. I'm not going to read everything on that, but if you're having trouble with being content or having too much of a fantasy life, then you need to read page 200 of my book, which is the passage for April 18th. That's on about fantasy and spending so much time on fantasy. And there's a little humorous story in there of me and my fantasy of moving to Galveston. Well, I guess I gave you enough now. Might as well have read it, huh? April 19th, I was angry about some things. Some of these I rewrote at the time of the pandemic. April 20th, um, why do good things happen? Um, why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? And so, um, on April 19th, I talk about social media a little bit. Getting upset what someone else writes. That's meaningless. That's meaningless. Um, the scripture for April 19th: do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. um, April 20th. I'm going to go ahead and read this. This must have been during the time of COVID that whatever I had written in here, I replaced with this. There's something else meaningless that occurs on earth. Righteous men who get what the wicked deserve, and wicked men who get what the righteous deserve. This too, I say, is meaningless. When a child exclaims, "It's not fair," what is the response we can expect? Well, life is not fair. It is sometimes irritating to see bad people living easy lives when we know good people that struggle to get a job that pays enough for them to support their family. I think I must have written this while Trump was president during his first presidency at the end of COVID, because here's what I wrote. It is upsetting to see a braggart and deceitful liar catch COVID-19 and get non-accessible treatment and quickly get better, while the associate pastor of your church gets sick and dies. You know, at the time, the associate pastor of my church got sick and died within a matter of 5 days. Donald Trump also got COVID, but he received treatment that was not yet available to other people. And he got well. And I tell you what, I was upset. I was upset that the associate pastor of my church died and this horrible, horrible person, Donald Trump, lived. In my mind, God, you got that wrong. Donald Trump should have died, the associate pastor of my church. And there were 12 people in my church that died in that during a short period of time there. Then those 12 people in my church, especially the associate pastor, should not have died, when Donald Trump should have been the one that died. I'm sharing my feelings. That's how I really felt. And I'm not going to read the rest of that. There is a group. There is a religious group that believes that God only gives blessings to all the good people. That is false, false, false theology. If you hear a preacher preach that God wants us to be rich, run from that congregation and don't go back. Okay. On April 21st, I selected Ecclesiastes 11, chapter 8. However many years a man may live, let him enjoy them all. Now, that's not saying enjoy them in evil. I mean, because there are Donald Trump and his friends are enjoying life right now while they're hurting all these people. That's not what it means. Solomon encourages the young to know and understand how to actually enjoy life. He warns of having regrets when they reach their final years and tries to teach them how to avoid the pitfalls during the early years. No one knows for sure how many years they will live. If you make plans to enjoy your life when you reach 65 and die at 50, you've wasted a large chunk of your time by working for a time that never arrived. Sometimes Christians get so fanciful in the religious talk that they can waste some of the gift of life on earth. It is not wrong to experience joy and fun while we are alive. We do not have to sit and read our Bibles, pray, and watch online church services every day and sit in our rocking chairs or our recliners waiting for Jesus. You don't have to sit in your chair and talk about the Bible and Jesus and praying and watching hundreds of online church services every day. You don't have to do that. You can enjoy the life that God gave us. God gave us a life to enjoy it. Now, not to hurt others so that we enjoy it. So don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. And I know some people have already heard, right now, I've already tuned out and said, "Oh, blasphemy. Of course, it's all about Jesus. It's nothing else." Well, yes, but also no. So if you're arguing with me right now and you're staring at the TV, I'm probably talking to you. Life is a gift. Time is a gift. Human pleasures are a gift. God gives us life. Open the gift and use it. Our time on earth is not meant to be like the fancy china that sits in the cabinet and never gets used. Use the china. If it breaks, throw out the broken pieces. You were given life. Use it. And I'm going to end there with the prayer. If you've not read any of these in my deep and wide book, it starts with a scripture. It has my commentary, and I end with a prayer. So here was my prayer on page 203 for April 21st. And these are my personal prayers, okay? God, thank you for the life you have given me. The experiences of my past and the life I have already lived made me who I am today in my human existence. Help me remember these words from Solomon as I continue to live the days yet to come. Do good for others and be happy. Amen. If you're enjoying these podcasts, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for watching.